It all started innocently enough, just a few missing packages here and there. At first I thought it was just bad luck or maybe a mix-up by the delivery company. The neighborhood had always been safe, quiet, and orderly. The kind of suburban perfection that homeowners associations love to brag about. Rows of neatly trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, and a board of HOA members who seemed to take their roles far too seriously. I'd lived there for 5 years without a single problem. My deliveries always arrived on time, and nothing ever went missing. But then, about a month ago, things began to change. The first time it was a small box containing some tools I'd ordered online. The delivery confirmation said it had been dropped off at my porch, yet when I got home, it was gone. I figured maybe it was delivered to the wrong address. I shrugged it off. A week later, it happened again. Then again. This time it wasn't just small items. A box of new headphones, a small kitchen appliance, even a decorative lamp I'd been looking forward to, all marked as delivered, all vanished without a trace. I began to wonder if I was being specifically targeted. The strange part was that none of my neighbors seemed to be having the same problem. I casually brought it up during a community meet and greet, but everyone seemed surprised. They hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia, or Pat as she insisted people call her, was especially dismissive. She had that fake, sugary tone that made everything she said sound polite and condescending at the same time. She assured me that package theft wasn't an issue in her community, and suggested I double-check my tracking numbers. That phrase stuck with me. Her community. Pat treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. She'd been president for 3 years, and her control over everything, from fence colors to garbage schedules, was absolute. I'd heard whispers that she fined people for leaving their trash bins out for too long or having the wrong shade of mulch. Everyone tiptoed around her. At first I didn't suspect her at all. Why would I? She was the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood's reputation. But as the weeks went by and more deliveries disappeared, I started noticing small, unsettling details. The security camera near the entrance of the subdivision was supposedly monitored by the HOA, but when I asked if I could review footage from the days my packages went missing, Pat said the system had been under maintenance. Conveniently, it had been down each time something vanished from my porch. Then there was the incident with my neighbor Jordan. He mentioned offhandedly that Pat had complained to him about the number of deliveries I was receiving lately, claiming it was making the neighborhood look cluttered. That was strange. How did she even know what I was ordering or how often? My packages were usually dropped off when I wasn't home. The pieces didn't fit, until one day I came home earlier than usual. As I turned the corner to my street, I noticed a figure walking away from my porch. It was someone wearing a large sun hat and carrying what looked like a cardboard box. The car parked a few houses down looked familiar. A silver SUV with an HOA decal on the windshield. By the time I pulled up, the person was gone, and my package, a new smartwatch, was nowhere to be seen. That's when suspicion hardened into certainty. I reported it to the police, but without proof, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested I install a security camera of my own. I already had one, a doorbell cam, but it had mysteriously stopped working around the time the thefts began. When I checked it, the wire had been cut. Something told me this wasn't a random thief. This was personal. Someone who had access. Someone who wanted control. I replaced the camera and installed a new one. Smaller, hidden, and connected directly to cloud storage. It was positioned perfectly to capture anyone approaching my porch. If the thief came back, I'd have them on video. That night, as I checked the live feed before bed, a cold certainty settled in my chest. Whoever was taking my packages wasn't just a petty thief. They were watching me, testing me, seeing how far they could go. The next delivery was due in 2 days, and this time I'd be ready. 2 days later, the sun rose over the pristine neighborhood like nothing was wrong. Lawns were freshly watered, sprinklers ticking in perfect rhythm, and the same handful of retirees walked their dogs down the spotless sidewalks. It was a picture-perfect morning. the kind that would have looked right at home in an HOA brochure. But behind the calm surface, I was seething and ready. I had planned everything carefully. The delivery that was arriving wasn't particularly valuable, just a decoy I'd ordered online for the sole purpose of baiting whoever had been stealing from me. Inside the box was nothing more than an old phone case wrapped in bubble wrap, but from the outside it looked brand new and expensive. The package was scheduled to arrive in the afternoon, and I made sure to be at work, at least according to anyone watching my driveway. My car was gone, but my hidden cameras were rolling. I had installed 3 of them now, one by the porch light, another disguised inside a decorative plant, and a third hidden behind the mailbox post with a clear angle toward the street. Each fed into my phone in real time. As noon passed, the delivery notification came through. Your package has been delivered. I checked the camera feed. The courier dropped it neatly on the porch, snapped a photo, and drove off. Everything looked normal. Then, less than 20 minutes later, movement flickered on the feed. A figure appeared at the edge of the frame, cautious, glancing around. I froze. The camera's wide-angle lens caught everything. The person approached quickly, wearing sunglasses and a wide-brimmed sun hat, identical to the one I'd seen that day weeks ago. But this time, there was no mistaking the face that briefly turned toward the camera as she adjusted her bag. It was Pat, the HOA president. She didn't hesitate. She stepped right onto my porch like she owned it, picked up the box, tucked it under her arm, and walked back down the steps with the same calm authority she always carried at meetings. Within 30 seconds, she was gone. I watched in disbelief as her silver SUV, the same one with the HOA parking decal, pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. For a few minutes, I just stared at the footage, heart pounding. My mind spun through possibilities. Maybe she was moving it for safekeeping? Maybe she thought it was someone else's delivery. But no, the precision, the timing, the familiarity with my schedule. This wasn't random. It was intentional. I rewatched the clip again and again, each time noticing more details. The way she glanced toward the neighbors' houses to make sure no one was watching. The way she used a plastic grocery bag to hold the box, perhaps to avoid leaving fingerprints. She knew exactly what she was doing. When the initial shock wore off, anger took its place. I downloaded the footage, backed it up in multiple places, and then decided to test just how deep her manipulation went. If Pat was bold enough to steal packages from my porch in broad daylight, how many other residents had she done this to? How long had she been getting away with it? That evening, I attended the monthly HOA meeting. Pat was there, sitting confidently at the head of the table, gavel in hand, smiling as if she hadn't just been caught on camera committing theft hours earlier. She spent half the meeting lecturing people about community standards and maintaining integrity. I said nothing. Not yet. I wanted more proof, something irrefutable. Over the next few days, I let a few more deliveries come through. One after another, they disappeared, and each time, Pat appeared on my hidden cameras. Sometimes during the day, sometimes in the evening. Always the same pattern. Quick, precise, rehearsed. She even started wearing different hats and jackets to disguise herself, as though she suspected something but wasn't quite sure. By the end of the week, I had hours of footage showing the HOA president of our perfect neighborhood stealing from my porch like a common thief. Now I had to decide how to expose her, quietly or spectacularly. Part of me wanted to confront her directly, but another part, the part that had endured her smug attitude, her endless rules, her power trips, wanted her humiliation to be public and undeniable. So I started to plan something bigger. I contacted a local friend who ran a small community page online, the kind that posted lost pets and local alerts. I told him I had a story he wouldn't believe. Meanwhile, I set up one final delivery. Not a decoy this time, but something much more interesting. Something that would catch her red-handed. And when it did, there would be no escaping it. The plan had to be perfect. I couldn't risk tipping her off before I had everything I needed. After all, Pat wasn't just a petty thief. She was a manipulator, a control freak who believed she could twist any situation to her advantage. If I went to the police too early, she'd claim I doctored the footage or accuse me of harassment. No. If she was going to fall, it would have to be in a way so public, so undeniable, that even her closest HOA allies would turn on her. So, I set the stage. The final delivery was a medium-sized box, identical to the others she'd taken. But this one was special. I rigged it with a tiny motion-activated camera inside, just enough to capture anyone who picked it up. I also added a small GPS tracker hidden beneath the cardboard flap. Once the box was moved, I'd know exactly where it went. The bait inside? A brand new tablet box, empty but convincingly sealed. To make it even more enticing, I left the delivery deliberately visible, right in the middle of my porch, with my name clearly printed across the label. Then, I waited. I parked my car a few blocks away and monitored the feed from my phone. The afternoon sun was glaring across the pavement, washing everything in a lazy golden light. Neighbors came and went, some walking dogs, others mowing lawns. It was a normal day in the neighborhood, and that was exactly what I needed. At 3:17 p.m., there she was. Pat's silver SUV pulled up slowly, stopping right in front of my driveway. She sat there for a few moments, scanning the street, pretending to check her phone. Then she got out. No sun hat this time, just a baseball cap and sunglasses. Her movements were careful, calculated. She strode up to my porch, grabbed the box, and without hesitation, turned back toward her car. As soon as she placed the package on the passenger seat, I watched the GPS tracker ping on my screen. The little dot began to move down the map, straight toward her house. It was official. The HOA president was stealing deliveries and taking them to her own property. I recorded every second of her route, every frame of her theft. When she reached her home, a large, meticulously kept property at the end of the cul-de-sac, the camera inside the box caught a faint image of her opening it. A flash of her shocked expression filled the screen as she realized there was no tablet inside, just a folded sheet of paper. That note, handwritten by me, said only one thing: smile for the camera. I could almost imagine the rage that must have swept over her when she read it. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. Pat had been making rounds, visiting neighbors, trying to spin her own story first. She told people she'd been collecting unattended packages for safekeeping that she didn't want porch pirates giving our neighborhood a bad reputation. It was a desperate move, and it told me one thing. She knew she'd been caught, but I wasn't finished. I edited together the best clips from my footage: the stolen packages, her face clearly visible, her SUV pulling away, and I sent the full compilation to my friend who ran the community Facebook page. Within an hour, he uploaded it with the headline, "Caught on Camera, HOA President Stealing from Residents." The video exploded overnight. Comments poured in. Neighbors tagging each other, people from nearby communities chiming in with their own HOA horror stories. Some didn't believe it at first, until they recognized her house, her car, even her distinct voice captured faintly in one of the clips. By the next morning, the footage had gone viral far beyond our neighborhood. It was shared on Reddit, on local news outlets, even featured in a short segment on a regional TV channel. Pat's perfect image was crumbling before her eyes. But what fascinated me most wasn't the public outrage. It was how quickly her own board members turned against her. By the time I stepped outside the next day, a few of them were already going door to door, distancing themselves, claiming they had no knowledge of her actions. Meanwhile, Pat had vanished. Her car was gone, her mailbox overflowing with letters, and the HOA website was suddenly under maintenance. I thought it was over. I thought the trap had done its job, but I was wrong, because when people like Pat lose control, they don't go quietly, they fight back. The morning after the video went viral, the neighborhood no longer felt like the peaceful, picture-perfect suburb I'd known. The air was charged with whispers, suspicion, and disbelief. Everyone was talking about it. The stolen packages, the hidden cameras, the HOA president caught red-handed. The once spotless streets now buzzed with quiet tension. Neighbors gathered in driveways, pretending to water plants while sneaking glances at Pat's empty house. The same people who once bowed to her authority were now gossiping about her downfall. For years, she had ruled the HOA with an iron smile, issuing fines for the smallest infractions, criticizing lawn lengths, and controlling every neighborhood event. But now, her empire had crumbled in a single day. By the afternoon, the HOA board held an emergency meeting, a frantic attempt to contain the scandal. I wasn't officially invited, but I didn't need to be. Word spread fast, and soon half the community gathered outside the clubhouse, listening through the open windows. Inside, the board members sat around the long oak table that had once been the stage for Pat's self-congratulatory speeches. The atmosphere was tense. Papers shuffled. Voices rose and fell. Some members tried to defend her, saying she had good intentions. Others demanded her immediate resignation. The community's reputation, they argued, was on the line. Eventually, the decision was made. Effective immediately, Patricia "Pat" Reynolds was removed from her position as HOA president, pending a police investigation. The announcement should have felt like victory, and at first it did. I went home that evening feeling an odd sense of relief, like a weight had lifted off my chest. For weeks I had lived with paranoia and anger, but now, finally, justice had been served, or so I thought. That night, the neighborhood group chat exploded again. Someone had seen Pat's car back in her driveway. Another neighbor claimed she'd been outside, pacing in the dark, her porch light flickering. There were reports of her shouting on the phone, arguing with someone, though no one dared approach. I tried to ignore it, but unease crept in. Something about the way she'd been exposed so publicly made me wonder how she would react. Pat wasn't the type to admit defeat. She was vindictive, calculating, the kind of person who would rather destroy everything than lose face. The following morning, I woke to find something strange on my front lawn. My trash bin had been overturned, its contents scattered across the grass. A small note was taped to the side of it, a piece of torn notebook paper with words scrawled in red marker. "You think you're clever. Watch your step." My stomach turned. It was short, childish even, but the implication was clear. I checked my cameras immediately. The footage from the previous night showed movement around 2:37 a.m., a shadowy figure walking up my driveway, head down, wearing a hooded jacket. I couldn't see the face, but the body language was unmistakable. Pat had been there. I reported it to the police again, but they said without a clear visual there wasn't much they could do. They promised to increase patrols in the area, but deep down, I knew she wouldn't stop so easily. Over the next few days, odd things started happening. My mail went missing again. My Wi-Fi router mysteriously reset itself. A neighbor mentioned seeing Pat at the community park, talking to people and trying to convince them that the footage was fake, that I had staged everything to get attention. It was surreal, watching her spiral. The once untouchable HOA president now lurked around the neighborhood like a ghost of her former self, desperate to cling to the power she'd lost. But even as her lies spread, so did the truth. The video had taken on a life of its own online. Local news outlets started camping out near our entrance sign, interviewing residents. A few YouTubers even made commentary videos about the scandal, calling it the HOA package thief story. Each one got thousands of views. And then came the final blow. The police showed up at Pat's house with a warrant. Someone had anonymously sent them the same footage I'd uploaded, along with a GPS log that matched the stolen package's movements to her address. Within hours, she was escorted out in handcuffs. For the first time in weeks, the neighborhood felt quiet again. There were no more stolen packages, no more whispers of doubt. People smiled when they saw me. A few even thanked me for standing up to her. But despite the relief, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Because that night, as I checked my cameras before bed, I noticed something strange. A car, not hers, idled across the street for nearly 10 minutes, lights off. When I zoomed in on the license plate, it was partially obscured. The car pulled away slowly, but not before a glint of light caught on something in the passenger seat. A phone, recording. It felt like someone new was watching. Maybe a friend. Maybe another board member. Or maybe Pat had allies I didn't know about. Whatever it was, one thing was certain. The story that had gone viral wasn't finished yet. In the days following Pat's arrest, the neighborhood began to return to a fragile sense of normalcy. The lawns were trimmed again, the garbage bins neatly aligned at the curb, and the chatter that once revolved around stolen deliveries now focused on disbelief. Disbelief that our HOA president had been the one behind it all. But peace built on. Scandal never lasts long. Even after the police took her away, Pat's presence lingered like a stain on everything. Rumors swirled that she'd been released on bail, that she was planning to sue for defamation, that she had dirt on the other HOA board members. Some claimed she had secretly filmed meetings. Others whispered that she'd stolen more than just packages, HOA funds, maybe, or private resident information. Whatever the truth was, one thing was clear. People were scared. The remaining board members scrambled to regain control, posting long, formal statements online about community unity and moving forward. They promised transparency, new elections, and better accountability. But every message felt hollow. The neighborhood had seen too much. Its carefully curated image shattered in a matter of days. Meanwhile, my own life had changed in ways I hadn't expected. The viral video had exploded far beyond anything I'd imagined. News outlets across the country had picked it up, using titles like HOA President Exposed by Homeowner's Hidden Camera and Neighborhood Power Gone Wrong. My face wasn't in the video, but my name somehow got out anyway. Strangers started messaging me, some thanking me, others warning me to watch my back. It was strange, being the accidental center of attention. Some called me a hero. Others accused me of exploiting the situation for views. I ignored most of it, but the more the story spread, the more I realized I'd unleashed something I couldn't control. The neighborhood was divided. Half supported me. The other half whispered that I'd gone too far, that I'd embarrassed the community, that I'd ruined someone's life. One evening I found a note taped to my front door. It wasn't threatening this time. Just a single line written neatly in black ink. Some of us think you should have kept this private. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I recognized the careful handwriting of one of the board members. The same man who used to nod in agreement with everything Pat said. The line between right and wrong, I realized, had blurred. I'd wanted justice, but what I'd started had spiraled into something much bigger. The story wasn't just about a stolen package anymore. It was about power, pride, and reputation. The HOA wasn't collapsing. It was transforming, reshaping itself into something more secretive, more cautious. And I was their reminder of what happened when someone dared to expose the truth. Still, I tried to move on. The deliveries returned without incident. I even took down one of the hidden cameras, thinking maybe the chaos was finally over. Then, one afternoon, a new envelope arrived in my mailbox. It had no return address. Inside was a printed photograph, grainy, but clear enough to recognize what it showed. My front porch, taken from across the street, sometime the previous night. There was a small sticky note attached. Did you really think this was finished? The handwriting wasn't Pat's. It was unfamiliar, slightly slanted, sharp. My stomach dropped. I checked my security footage again. Around midnight, the same mysterious car I'd noticed days earlier had parked at the corner of my street. The headlights turned off. The driver sat there for several minutes, then stepped out briefly, walking just out of view of the camera. Moments later, the figure returned to the vehicle and drove away. No face, no license plate, no clear angle. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had taken up her cause. Or worse, that she had orchestrated this from behind the scenes. A few days later, the local news confirmed what I feared most. Pat had been released on bail pending trial. She was back in the neighborhood, staying with a relative just a few blocks away. The idea of her being nearby again sent a chill through me. I started noticing odd coincidences, cars slowing as they passed my house, unfamiliar footprints in the grass, and once, a faint tapping sound near my back fence late at night. The police said there was no direct evidence linking her to any new incidents. They advised me to stay vigilant and keep my security system active. So I did. I upgraded everything: new cameras, motion sensors, even floodlights with alarms. But no matter how much I fortified my property, I couldn't protect myself from the unease that had settled in my mind, because I knew how people like Pat thought. To her, this wasn't over. It wasn't about packages anymore, it was about control. I'd taken that from her, and she'd do anything to get it back. As night fell that week, I caught myself checking the camera feed one last time before bed. Everything looked calm: empty streets, still trees, the faint glow of streetlights. Then, at exactly 12:03 a.m., one of my motion sensors blinked red. A figure moved at the edge of my yard. The shape was faint, blurry, but there was something disturbingly familiar in the way it turned toward the camera before disappearing into the darkness. The footage froze on the faint outline of a woman's face, and though it was hard to see clearly, I could swear she was smiling. The night the motion sensor went off marked the beginning of the end. Sleep became impossible after that. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside made my heart pound. I began keeping the security feed open on my phone at all hours. The porch light stayed on through the night, casting long shadows across the driveway. I knew it was only a matter of time before she, or whoever she had working for her, tried something again. 2 days passed in uneasy silence. The police did extra patrols, but that didn't calm the dread growing inside me. I felt watched constantly, the faint awareness of eyes lingering from somewhere unseen. Even my neighbors, once friendly and sympathetic, had started to avoid me. Some crossed the street when they saw me coming. Others glanced nervously toward their homes as if fearing they'd be next to end up in a viral scandal. Then came the second envelope. It was left in the same place as before, my mailbox. But this time, there was no photograph inside. Just a small USB drive. No note, no handwriting, nothing. I hesitated before plugging it into my laptop, my hands trembling slightly. When the file opened, I froze. It was security footage, but not mine. The camera angle was from above my backyard, one I didn't own or recognize. The timestamp was from the previous night. The footage showed me stepping outside briefly to take out the trash, completely unaware that a small camera hidden somewhere nearby was recording every movement. The message was clear. She was watching me now. I felt sick. She had turned the tables. Somehow Pat had managed to install or use a camera to spy on me. I called the police immediately, but they said they couldn't confirm the footage's origin. It could have been tampered with or staged. There wasn't enough to prove anything. For the first time, I started to understand the kind of obsession that drove her. It wasn't just about packages anymore. This was about power, the kind that doesn't need a title or a committee to feel real. She'd lost her throne, and I had become her fixation, the symbol of everything she'd lost. That evening, I decided I wasn't going to live in fear any longer. I set up my cameras to record every possible angle, even the street in front of the house. Then I went through all the old footage I had saved, not just of her thefts, but of everything leading up to and after the exposure. I compiled it into one long, detailed documentary-style video. It showed the rise and fall of a woman who believed she was above everyone, and how her arrogance had destroyed her life. I uploaded it to the same local community page where the first clip had gone viral. This time, I included the aftermath, the vandalism, the threatening notes, even the mysterious footage she had sent me. Within hours, it blew up again. The title alone caught attention. HOA President Returns for Revenge. The Truth Behind the Viral Scandal. The story reignited across the internet. News stations revisited it. Influencers dissected it. And within days, the police reopened their investigation, not just into the original thefts, but into possible stalking and harassment. When they brought Pat in for questioning again, They discovered something unexpected. Inside her home, they found a hidden computer setup, hard drives full of footage, notes and even screenshots of residents' deliveries, schedules and personal information. She had been spying on multiple neighbors, not just me. It turned out she had installed small disguised cameras under community mailboxes and along certain property edges, claiming they were for security monitoring, but she had been using them for herself. The discovery shocked everyone. The same people who had once whispered against me now came forward with their own stories. Missing mail, misplaced packages, unexplained finds. The pattern stretched back years. When the police finally took her away for good, the neighborhood erupted with a strange mix of relief and shame. No one wanted to admit they had let it go on for so long. In the weeks that followed, things began to calm again. The HOA disbanded temporarily, new leadership was discussed, and the community started to feel alive in a way it hadn't before. Less controlled, more real. For the first time, people talked to each other without fear of judgment or fines. As for me, I took down most of my cameras. All but one. The hidden one by the mailbox. I left it there, not out of paranoia, but as a reminder. One evening, I stood on my porch, watching the sunset paint the rooftops orange. My phone buzzed with a notification, a comment on the latest video. Someone had written, "I used to live under an HOA like that. Thank you for exposing them." It made me realize something. What had started as a personal battle over missing deliveries had grown into a symbol of something much bigger. Ogu, a quiet rebellion against control and corruption. Hidden behind white fences and neighborhood. Pride. Justice had come, but it hadn't come easily. It had cost the illusion of peace. As night fell, I turned off the porch light, ready to finally rest. The neighborhood was quiet again. Truly quiet this time. But just before I went inside, a movement caught my eye. A delivery truck pulling up in front of my house. The driver placed a small box on my porch, waved, and drove away. I glanced down at it. No label, no name, just a plain cardboard box. For a long moment I stood there staring, uncertain whether to touch it. Then I noticed something written faintly across the top in marker. 4 simple words that made my chest tighten. "You forgot something, neighbor." The wind rustled through the trees as I stepped back, my pulse quickening. I looked around. The street was empty, silent, still. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure whether the story was truly over.